Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I'm reviewing a very popular and innovative game for the original PlayStation released in the late 90s. This is TOMBA, with an exclamation point. Long before Angry Birds declared war on pigs, there was TOMBA, released in 1997 for the PlayStation in Japan and 98 in the West. This is a rather unique side-scrolling action-adventure platformer RPG, where you control a pink-haired caveman out to defeat a bunch of evil pigs. And you thought Super Mario Bros. Was the only game on mushrooms. There's no doubt that many of you have already played this game. It's wildly popular on the PlayStation, yet somehow I completely missed it, probably because I don't typically go for platformers, but it's more like a side-scrolling Zelda than a platformer. As you discover events and then complete them, it's like a whole bunch of side quests. You can find used copies out there or download it from the PlayStation Network. I'm playing this on the PlayStation 3. And gotta admit, while it's not my kind of game, it's a very good-looking game and really imaginative. Complete with some really nice animated sequences, among the better ones on the original PlayStation, right up there with the Ghost in the Shell PlayStation game. But Ghost in the Shell doesn't have a neat pig loading screen. So you go through this wild side-scrolling platforming adventure, picking up new weapons and stuff, kind of like Zelda, occasionally exploring towns and talking to everybody like an old-school RPG, and make sure to speak to everyone, frequently more than once, because they dish out most of your quests. Like, oh, your kitten's trapped in the volcano, but you can't get it until you've rescued these 7 dwarfs from the freaking weird-ass tree thing, which can only be defeated after 4 bottles of wine and 7 magic mushrooms. Which sounds to me like the diet that the designers of Tomba were on when they made this. Breakfast of Champions. As I'm recording this in 2012, there's the benefit of internet walkthroughs. I can't even imagine having played this game when it was new, the amount of time that you would have had to put into it, backtracking and exploring areas thoroughly. It's a monstrous game, and many of the missions are fairly abstract, and require some real out-of-the-box kind of thinking. Unlike a lot of newer games that have a cartoony style, this one doesn't just hand you your next item with an obvious clue. Sometimes you've got to think about it. And it's easy to get stuck. Tomba is not for those who are instantly frustrated. After a lot of platforming, you'll get to a point where you have to use an item to get to the next level, or clear the fog, for example. And you often have to do a lot of stuff in sequence. And it can be frustrating and quite annoying at times, but the reward is a genuinely imaginative, likable journey. Beyond what most games in this genre were doing in 1998. These days you see RPG elements spread through everything with experience points, health and weapon upgrades, and while that stuff existed in games like Metroid and Blaster Master, this one just takes it to a new level. And it really feels like a side-scrolling RPG. More than a standard platformer. Complete with boss battles, I might add. Have fun with them. At some point in the first pig boss battle, I wanted to crush my controller with a sledgehammer, but had to remind myself it's an expensive PlayStation 3 controller, not the cheap, easy-to-replace PlayStation 1 controller. Tomba is definitely more about exploration, thinking, and completing quests than it is straight-up platforming, but you've really got to like any game where you help an old woman break wind. When you give the gift of flatulence, you're giving the power of love, and I think that's one of the lines that Huey Lewis cut out of his song. Yeah, and speaking of music, the music in Tomba is just bizarre. In fact, the whole game is kind of weird, but that's what makes it neat. That's what makes it Tomba. If you think this one looks and sounds cool, give it a download. In fact, you can find a lot of good PlayStation 1 games available for your PS3. Just remember not to smash your controller to bits if you get stuck. You can find a walkthrough somewhere if you need help. It's Tomba for the PlayStation and PlayStation 3, an interesting, creative, imaginative, yet occasionally frustrating game with some weird-ass music. I really want to napalm carpet bomb the mushroom forest. It's an unhappy place.